I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining everyone who's here. Sandra, Laura, Amy, and Christy. We got a pretty small group today. So if anyone has a question or anything while I'm going through this, feel free to just ask it. Uh, we'll be recording this for everybody to watch online later. So with all of that being said, here, we'll just go ahead and dive in. So here are our Sentinel lab locations, the labs who participated. Four in Omaha, two in Lincoln, off at North Platte and Scottsbluff. Full-time employee status across the state, five labs, 100 people, and then we've got just one lab with more than 30, kind of all over. And here are the biochemical tests we're running. Let's see here. The big six, most everybody does. I know motility is not really a requirement anymore. So we lost a couple of Sentinel labs there too who do our challenge sets. We just don't keep motility anymore. But for the most part, we got them all. And then for training, here's our percentage of lab techs trained annually. So kind of even across the board there. I want to note that our announcement for our next wet workshop in September will be coming out soon, kind of finalizing some details. So if you have techs that need to get trained, we're going to be having a wet workshop in North Platte at the beginning of September, and then Omaha after that. So look out for that. So here we go. LPX 1 was an 8-year-old with acute sepsis not responding to normal antibiotics. First, we're going to look at the plate growth. For all of these on the left-hand side, we'll have Nebraska's numbers, and on the right-hand side, I put the numbers of the whole country, national numbers. So as you can see, our two graphs here look very similar. Similar answers across the board, even some labs setting CNA and PEA. Our gram reaction, all gram negative, so that's good. Unanimous. Same thing with morphology. All 9 of our Sentinel labs called this gram negative bacilli, gram negative rods. Here's a gram stain that I took, and this is admittedly, this is from the second day of growth. So you're kind of starting to see the decolorization in the center there, the safety pin morphology, but this is it's small, but it's definitely a bacillus gram negative rod. And so for our plate growth, everybody called this non-hemolytic on the blood plate. Had a few discrepant results on the national level, but unanimous in Nebraska. We did, however, have some disagreement on the fermentation from the McConkey. Majority of labs calling this a lactose fermenter. So here's an example from this organism that I grew. And it does look a little bit pink. If you are examining this closely, these are just kind of dark colonies on the McConkey. They're not like the bright pink lactose fermenters you'd see from like an E. coli. And this particular organism does have, it's not a lactose fermenter. So the tests we ran for LPX1, and I apologize, this can be a little hard to interpret here, just because we got the positive, the negative, and then not performed. But the big ones, the catalase tests, majority of our labs had catalase positive. It was more evenly split on the national level. All of them indole negative. If you remember, our two constants is all of our BT organisms are catalase positive, and they're all indole negative. And then our oxidase test looks consistent with the national level, and kind of mixed results on the motility and who ran it. So for the results on LPX1, kind of evenly split, we had 6 labs who could not rule out Burkholderia pseudomallei, and 3 labs who said it's a non-BT culture. So the results from CAP on this, this was Burkholderia thailandensis, which cannot be differentiated from pseudomallei in a sentinel lab. I know we had some discrepancies. There was a couple of labs said catalase negative, which might lead you off the track. The fermentation, Burkholderia thailandensis is a non-fermenter, so if you interpreted that as a lactose fermenter, you probably call this a non-BT culture. So we want to pay attention to that. So correct answers for this were suspect Burkholderia pseudomallei or unable to rule out Burkholderia mallei or pseudomallei. And then for the reference lab, the correct response was non-BT culture. So any questions after the first one? And if not, we'll just keep moving.
I have a question.
Yes.
So this is Christy from Brian, and what would have been, if this actually would have been a patient culture, what in your mind is the first indication that this was BT? Because it's growing on all 3 media. People are thinking it's just a normal gram-negative rod. What in your eyes should have jumped out?
It's a slow grower. Normally on day 1, if you got a gram-negative rod that's growing slowly, that is usually when I would take things under the hood for the rest of the workup. That's and any of the gram negatives, that's going to be the biggest indication. Because this plate here, let me go back and find my picture. I mean, this is from 24 hours of incubation. You know, it's not like a real strong growth. I unfortunately did not take pictures of the blood and the chocolate, but that would be my biggest indication.
Well, if you've got the moldy, you're doing your identifications at 18 to 24 hours. So if I looked at that at 18 hours, I mean, yes, it's like growth, but most of your non-fermenters look like that. They're not.
Yeah, I know, and that's what that is why the moldy is making things easier and more difficult. And I think we've seen more exposures because of that.
Yep.
I don't know if we're going to see recommendations coming down from, you know, up above about how to avoid that, because that's definitely is leading to an increased number of exposures in the state. And workloads are getting, you know, more and more intense. And so people are trying to get through their cultures a lot faster.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry I don't have a better, more solid answer other than the size of the growth. I'm going to make a note. I'm going to see if there's anything out there, Christy.
Okay. Well, and like you said, everybody's trying to get through their so I don't know that on day 1 would have really stuck out to me if reading a culture, to be honest.
Yeah.
Being not very good growth. Because we had better growth on our bloods and chocolate.
Yeah, and I think so. And really, I was involved in an exposure with Brucella because of this too. The tech in front of me had put it on the moldy and didn't. And so, and you know, these aren't actual BT organisms. So on day 2, you probably get better growth than a real one. But I do know Brucella is very, very tiny at days 2 and 3. So hopefully, if if you're reaching that point, you still haven't put it on the multi, you know.
We had a tularemia that was just as big as any Haemophilus on day one.
Yeah. Growing on the blood,
It was growing, nope, chocolate.
just on the chocolate. Yeah.
Yep.
Did you ID it as Francisella on the multi?
We don't have the BT,
Oh, yeah.
whatever, software, so no, we got no identifications.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna try to look up if there's any emerging recommendations at this moment, because it is starting to become an issue. So I will, if I find anything, I will send something out. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Christy.
Yeah, I just didn't know if anybody else was seeing the same thing I was, because it's just kind of getting scary.
Yeah, are there any more comments on that? Okay. Okay, yeah, I'll look into that a little further and see if we can't find something. So this one, unlike the first LPX2 here, is 31-year-old artisan making clothes from cow hides. Here again, nationally pretty consistent. Our numbers are our percentages versus the national. Growth on blood and chocolate, but not on the McConkey. And we had a gram positive bacilli, unanimous. So here's a picture of our gram stain, big blocky gram positive rods. And you notice here they can easily decolorize. They're easily decolorized, and this organism should have grown very well at 24 hours. So I think if I'm looking ahead here. Oh, no, sorry. Sorry about that. So if we're looking at our plate growth, pretty consistent with the national numbers. We had one lab who noted this as having beta hemolysis. I took a look at this. I know it's not easy to see in this picture, but this did not have beta hemolysis, so this is non-hemolytic. Here's my picture, and yeah, I do have a slide out of order here. I'm gonna get rid of this. Okay. So here's my picture. Sorry, I was looking at a different screen. So I know it's not easy to see, but there's not really a good way to hold it up to the light and get a picture of it in the hood. But non-hemolytic. So, and then again, McConkey, no growth there, so not a fermenter. Biochemical tests. If this is what we're kind of expecting it to be, we do the catalase and we do the motility at room temperature, which should be positive and catalase positive, just like all of our organisms. If this was Bacillus anthracis, it would be non-motile. And a lot of labs aren't doing the motility. It looks like we had just over half of our labs did the motility. One had a positive, and 6 labs, sorry. 5 negatives, 1 positive. I want to mention this about the motility as well. When we were doing our challenge set, I set up a positive and negative control, and I set up the organisms that we sent out. And I don't know how many labs are using the Remel motility, but I found it difficult to interpret, even the controls. So I don't know if labs are struggling with that. I know we're not necessarily requiring the motility, but I think Becky and I are going to revisit the idea of making motility for laboratories for our challenge sets, and then maybe 1 or 2 extras for if you should have a rule out. I just want to mention that. we're talking about it.
Yeah, Ben, this is Christy again. So I agree. We do the Remel and
Yeah.
we are the one lab probably that got the modal positive, but we always do the positive control and negative control with it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't precisely clear, but it was more on the modal side that it was not modal.
Yeah. And that's what I noticed too when we were going through them is like, I guess you could call it's kind of how, you know, it's kind of like the answers we were coming up with. Knowing how the organism was supposed to react probably pushed us in a certain direction, but it it's not it's not an easy interpretation to make with the Remel. So that being said, here were the results that we came up with. Yeah, most people expecting Bacillus anthracis. And we had 3 labs say non-BT culture. So this was Bacillus megatherium in pure culture. So the expected response was non-BT culture. I think the big giveaway for this one was the plate morphology. You know, Bacillus anthracis is dry, spready, ground glass, tenacious. And this was kind of a more round, mucoidy, at least in our laboratory, morphology. And if you call for a consult on Bacillus, yeah, the morphology will be one of the things discussed. But biochemical testing, if you're going off the biochemical tests, yeah, you probably would have landed at the conclusion that this was Bacillus anthracis. So any questions or comments after number 2? Okay. Last one, 43-year-old female with fever and abdominal pain. So, plate growth, consistent with the national numbers. Kind of we only had a couple of labs set up the chocolate, similar to nationally. Gram stain, again, unanimous gram negative. And then here we had some people saying coccobacilli, one lab saying coccobacilli, and the rest bacilli, which is similar to the national. So here's my picture of the gram stain. These are maybe a little bit smaller than the first one. You don't see that capsule inside of these, but they're still elongated enough to call this a bacilli in my book. So I would have leaned toward gram negative rod on this one. We had blood growth, everyone non-hemolytic or not set. Similar to the first, the McConkey here. Well, we had more people calling this one a non-lactose fermenter in the first one, but you could see this one still got a little bit of pigment to the colony, but not that like bright pink lactose fermenter that we're kind of used to seeing from like E. coli. So biochemical tests. Catalase positive, consistent with all of our BT organisms. We had a lot of indole positives on this one, which would be a rule out, and you saw that on the national level too. Oxidase negative, not a lot of motility performed. So the results here, we had all of our labs concluding that this was a non-BT culture. And so this was a Yersinia enterocolitica in pure culture. So this was indeed not a BT culture. So 100% on the third. Is any questions over the third one? Anything I need to recover? Okay. Well, just about 22 minutes. That's everything. If anyone does come up with any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Again, this will be posted on the website soon for if you have techs that would like to watch it and they need a chance. Otherwise, that's all I have for you today.
Thanks, Ben.
Okay, yep, thanks.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, everyone. Talk to you later.